What's going on, y'all? Today we have another banger deck tech video. Today we're going to be going over Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. And the whole point of this deck is to put -1/-1 counters on any creature that we can, whether that be our own creatures or whether that be enemy creatures. And in doing so, we create a huge board state filled with 1/1 Death Touchers, and eventually cast some sort of overrun or some sort of trample effect to get through and deal some massive combat damage. Let's jump into it. Alright, kicking it off here, we're going to start with the mana base. We're going to be running 20 swamps and 13 forests, just because there's more black than there is green in this deck. As for lands that both produce black and green, I went ahead and went with Twilight Mire, Llanowar Wastes, and Wastewood Verge, one of the new Aether Drift lands. The only reason I threw this in here is because it was at a local game shop, so I picked it up. I also run Golgari Rot Farm. This land is up for debate in this deck just because turn 2 is such a pivotal turn, and we need to get Hapatra out on turn 2 every game. However, I really just love these bounce lands because they come in, they return a land to hand, and then they ensure that you hit your land drop for the next turn, which I just think is so amazing in Commander. The best form of ramp in this entire game is hitting your damn land drops. So, 38 lands, baby. Fucking womp womp. If you're like, oh, I need to cut down to 34 lands because I like all my... No! Hit your fucking land drops, man. I'm tired of all these games of people coming in here and they're like, man, I feel like I didn't do anything all game. Yeah, motherfucker, because you run 32 lands. Fucking pump that land count up and play some fucking Magic. Okay, enough ranting aside. On to the next part of the deck. Alright, for the next section, we're going to be talking about doing the thing. Unless we are doing the thing, we are doing nothing. I mean, not technically true, but for the most part, I wanted the deck to consist of many ways to put -1/-1 counters on things, because getting a 1/1 creature with Death Touch is such an amazing payoff, just in general, that having a ton of win more cards honestly is not necessary. So let's look at the cards that are doing the thing. We have a couple of highlights here. Black Sun Zenith is probably, I would say, the best card in the deck, because for 3 mana, you get to put a -1/-1 counter on every creature, and then you just shuffle it back into the library. It's fucking amazing, because you're going to be getting a Hapatra trigger off of each creature that is on the battlefield. And what's cool about this is you may be saying, oh my god, like it just kills all the snakes that I already have. Cool. It just replaces them because you're putting a -1/-1 counter on the snake. It dies, but because you put a -1/-1 counter on it, you get another one back. And so you end up flooding the board with snakes while also decreasing the overall power of the table. And, you know, honestly, feel free to cast Black Sun Zenith for X equals whatever number. It's still going to trigger Hapatra across all the creatures. And even if Hapatra dies, this is such an amazing payoff that might be fine. Another banger is Amit Eternal. 3 mana for a 5/5, has Afflict 3. Whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a -1/-1 counter on Amit Eternal. What? This is amazing. It also has, whenever Amit Eternal deals combat damage to a player, remove all -1/-1 counters from it. Damn. This card is a powerhouse because people want to cast spells in Commander. That is, people just want to cast spells in Commander. They want to do it, and they can't help it. And they're like, oh, but if I cast it, he gets a little snake. Boy, people don't even pay their Ristic tax, okay? People are okay with giving people a card whenever they cast a spell. They ain't gonna do jack shit when it comes to dealing with Amit Eternal. Until it's too late. Until you have a huge board of snakes swinging at them, killing their best creature. Yeah, I love Amit Eternal. This card is amazing in this deck. Another banger is going to be Spitting Dilophosaurus. This is a 3 mana 3/2, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Cool, that's already doing the thing. We love that. But then it also says creatures your opponents control with -1/-1 counters on them can't block. This is amazing in this deck for two reasons. It lets you manipulate blockers in two ways. You can either put the -1/-1 counters on the chumps so that they're forced to block with their valuable creatures, or you can put the -1/-1 counters on their most valuable creatures so that you can swing in and they can't block your maybe value pieces, like, Spitting Dilophosaurus. This is just an overall amazing card that allows you to get in, and because we already have so many ways to put -1/-1 counters, it usually results in one player being unable to block anything you send their way, which is great. Massacre Girl is 2 and 2 black for a 4/4 that says creatures you control have Wither. This is really amazing in our deck because it just changes the dynamic of how we use our snakes and how the opponents deal with our snakes. Because before, they could chump block our snakes with 1/1s, and sure, their creature's going to die, but it's also going to take out one of our snakes. With Wither, either they chump block it, and then we just get another snake back because we're going to be putting -1/-1 counters on their creature, or they let the damage through. And so it feels very hopeless from an opponent's perspective when our snakes have Wither, because either they block it or they take it. It's fucking amazing. And last, but certainly not least, no Hapatra deck would be complete without the inclusion of Blowfly Infestation. 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. This card is awesome. One, because just like thematically thinking about the Blowfly Infestation, whenever a creature dies, you get to transmute the virus that it had to another that concept is just so cool. But this card's also just genuinely really amazing in this deck. Why? Because whenever a creature dies, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, you move it to another creature, and then you get another snake. And this is really interesting with a card called Nest of Scarabs and some other green enchantment that I'll put up on the screen. I forget exactly what it's called. It's also from Shadowmoor, I believe. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. And so you can imagine, if you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature that you control, maybe killing one of your snakes, that snake will die, and you will move a -1/-1 counter onto another one of your snakes. And when you do that, you will create both a snake and a 1/1 black insect creature. That snake that you put the -1/-1 counter on will die, and you will move a -1/-1 counter to the insect. And when you do, you'll create a snake and an insect. And you can do this to create infinite bodies on the field. There's no haste enablers in this deck. However, just obviously having a lot of bodies on the field is really nice. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the payoffs for having snakes. Payoffs for doing the thing. And there are a total of 9 payoffs here. Honestly, I want to mention all of them because they're all really amazing. So first is going to be Ophelia Viper Whisper. This is one of the new Jumpstarter cards, I believe. And 2 mana, comes down, 1/3, Death Touch, boom. Whenever it attacks, you can pay 1 in a black or green, Golgari, whatever, fusion mana. If you do create a 1/1 black snake creature with Death Touch, this provides an alternative way to generate snakes turn after turn if you have mana lying around. However, that last line is really the meat and potatoes of this card. 4 and a black, until end of turn, whenever one or more Gorgons and or snakes you control deal combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. Jesus Christ. Whenever you have a huge board of snakes and you're already taking care of their board via -1/-1 counters and all the other removal in the deck, you are going to swing in with some number of snakes. And when you do, they are going to take a huge chunk of damage. Ophelia is amazing. Comes down for 2 mana and already acts as a 1/3 blocker with Death Touch, which is great. Next up is going to be Necroskitter. This card is probably my favorite in the deck. One, because the art is just so amazing on this card. Look at this thing. Anyways, it's 1 black and a black for a 1/4 with Wither. Whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may return that card to the battlefield under your control. Do you like stealing your opponent's best creatures? Because I like stealing my opponent's best creatures, and if you don't like stealing your opponent's best creatures, you have a problem. Necroskitter is a banger in this deck, okay? Banger. Next up is going to be Mirkwood Bats. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. This one is up for debate for me, honestly, just because we aren't sacrificing tokens in this deck. We have no sacrifice outlets. We are not doing aristocratic strategies. We are favoring towards overrun. However, just burning people for whenever we create a snake, it's just a good payoff generally, so I included it here. Next up is Hooded Blightfang. 2 and a black for a 1/4 with Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Wow. It also has the added benefit of destroying planeswalkers, but womp womp, weird, nobody's ever gonna use that. That's really good, I won't lie. Initially, I had Blood Artist in this deck because I was like, well, if they block my snake, I will deal 1 damage to them, and they aren't gonna be able to deal with that. And then I saw this, and I was like, hey, yo, this is like way better because it doesn't care if my creatures connect or die or anything. It just cares that I attack, which I'm already trying to do. And it drains each of the opponents, and you gain life. You know how hard it is to gain life in this deck? There are no ways. This is amazing. This is an amazing payoff. Absolute auto include in a Hapatra deck. As for the payoff and like finisher cards, we have 2 trample cards. We have Enray's Forerunners, 5 and 3 green. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Enters the battlefield, gives all your creatures Vigilance and Trample. Cool. And then we have the typical Overrun, just because I'm doing this slightly budget-ish. I also kind of wanted to include Triumph of the Hordes. Feel free to include Triumph of the Hordes, which is amazing in this deck because it essentially gives your creatures Wither. I mean, in the form of Infect. But yeah, it has the same benefit of Massacre Girl as mentioned before on an Overrun card, which is really amazing. We also run Sashiro the Anointed, 4 and 2 green. Other snakes you control get +2/+2, and whenever a snake you control deals damage to a player, you may draw a card. This card probably could be swapped out for something better, but honestly, I just like the art and I like the card, so I decided to include it, and it's honestly not bad. Cards and Anthem effect, that's pretty good. So that's it for the finishers and the payoffs. Let's go ahead and look at some of the meat and potatoes, so our interaction and our draw package. For our draw package, honestly, I'm just running as many black card draw options as I can. Are they the most card efficient, mana efficient? No, honestly, I don't really care. I just wanted my draw package to be cheap and effective. So I'm running the Village Rites, the Ambitions Cost, the Ancient Craving, the Corrupted Conviction, the Harmonize, the Read the Bones, the Hostile Negotiations. This card's so cool, by the way. If you are not running this card, this is a budget banger. Sign in Blood, Plumb the Forbidden. This card's really amazing in this deck just because we have so many bodies on board. And Siphon Mind, Night's Whisper, and of course, no token deck is going to be complete without Skullclamp. As for our interaction package, we have Smell Fear. This card's cool in this deck. I wish it were instant speed, but womp womp, I guess. 2 mana, target creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, which if you choose the snake with Death Touch and it fights another creature, well, that creature dies. So this is 2 mana, destroy target creature, with the added benefit of Proliferate, which allows us to create more snakes, which is awesome. A fun one here, 6-sided die, 2 and a black for an instant. I honestly, guilty pleasure, I love including Infinity cards. I love the theme of this set, and whenever I get a chance to, I always throw some in, and this is no exception. Choose target creature, roll a 6-sided die. 1, it has base power toughness 1 until end of turn. Not a bad option if we're putting -1/-1 counters on creatures. 2, put 2 -1/-1 counters on it. Cool. 3, it deals 3 damage to it, and you gain 3 life. Honestly, all of these effects are pretty good given the fact that we're putting -1/-1 counters on creatures, and they're probably going to be below 4/4. Yeah, this is a great card in this deck. There's probably better options, but this card's cool, and I like that. Next, Crossing Grip, Tear Asunder, typical. Haywire Might, amazing, especially because it's just a turn 1 play that you can get down before Hapatra, which is pretty rare in this deck. Golgari Charm. This card I'm probably thinking of cutting or swapping in for some sort of protection piece or other removal piece. Just because 2 and a black, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. You don't really want to be using that on yourself because, you know, your snakes will die. However, destroying target enchantment and regenerating each creature you control is pretty good as a board wipe protection. Nature's Claim, of course, Beast Within, typical. Assassin's Trophy, amazing. Atomize, this card's awesome in this deck because, yeah, destroy target permanent, non-land permanent, and then Proliferate. So it acts as both removal and doing the thing. We also run Sudden Spoiling because this is really amazing. If any creature with 2 or more -1/-1 counters is just dead, which is cool because you can kind of surprise your opponents with this. Maybe they have a huge creature that they've been building up. They're running Voltron, or just they have some gargantuan thing, and you're trying to, you know, maintain that or level it out by putting -1/-1 counters on it, but it's outpacing you. Oh no! Boom! Draw into Sudden Spoiling. Cast it right as they attack at you. Boom! Their creature's dead. Split second. No room for interaction. Womp womp. Their creature's dead. Good job. And then of course we run Abrupt Decay in this special printing here because this flavor text is so insane. If you haven't read it right now, this is fucking metal. Yeah. All right, I think that just about does it for the interaction package. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ramp section. We have 4 cards here, and you may be wondering why we're running such little ramp. 1, we're running a high land count. 2, we have a ton of card draw in here that ensures that we hit our land drops. And 3, Hapatra is a 2-mana commander that does the thing and pays off for the thing. So as long as we get Hapatra out, we are going to at least generate 1 Death Touch Snake, which is amazing because that buys you enough time to draw into cards or draw into options and just play your lands in general. So for the ramp, we have 2 mana dorks here. We have Channeler Initiate. 1 in a black, enters the battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. That's probably going to be Channeler Initiate, and when you do, you'll generate a snake from Hapatra. Devoted Druid, 1 in a green, tap to add a green, and you can put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it. So bottom line is you can pay 1 in a green. This can come in, even though it doesn't tap right away. If you really need to, at instant speed, you can put a -1/-1 counter and generate a snake as a blocker, which is amazing. This card's awesome. And then Harvest Season. This is probably the best ramp piece in the deck of the 4. There's literally only 4. But this card is just generally amazing in this deck because you're already trying to swing out with your snakes. You're already generating a ton of snakes. And when you do, you cast this on main phase 2, and then you have a huge number of lands. What you do with that mana, you're going to be pumping it into all of our draw spells because we have so many draw cards in here. We're going to be drawing into our interaction. We're going to be able to interact with the board. We're going to be able to pay for things like Felia Viper Whisperer's activated cost. We're going to be paying for everything. We got money. We're rich. We did the thing. And we played our lands. And yeah, that's the whole point of ramp, baby. Alright, y'all, that just about does it for the Hapatra deck tech. I had a ton of fun building Hapatra, and I've had a ton of fun playing Hapatra. Getting all these snakes and putting -1/-1 counters on it is just so awesome. And the deck that we've crafted here has a ton of meat and potatoes. It ensures that you're doing the thing. And even if you don't win, I swear and I promise that you will be doing something during the game. And that is what Commander is all about. That being said, feel free to check out the deck list below. Archidec link is in the description. Feel free to leave a comment for any improvements or suggestions. This is my first deck tech video. So any sort of constructive criticism is amazing, and I really appreciate you getting to the end of the video. Peace.